Welcome back to Horror at Random. I am Brian at Random, and I am back with JustineUFF, and you are back with Decades of Horror / the 90s / Part 1. The 90s is really big, especially to the two of us with the age we are. It just is what it is. There's a lot of movies we need to talk about. So we're going to cut it into 2 parts, and guess what? Part 2 is going to be on her channel, and all the links are going to be down below, as usual. And before we start anything, fandomatrandom.com. Go and visit it. Go and watch everything we have. Click like and subscribe. Show us some love. And before you do that, go over to JustineUFF's channel on TikTok and Discord and everything else. Like I said, the links are going to be down below. Click on all her stuff. Show her some love. Subscribe.
Click on all of it.
Yeah, all that good stuff. Just keep clicking. And we've been recording all night, so we're going to be loopy and fun and crazy. So here we go. Yeah. Justine, what have you been up to? You want to update anybody on anything?
Well, besides my own Dirty Horror podcast, I'm also part of the Let Us In podcast, which you guested on today.
Was a blast.
We're covering werewolves, so spot Brian on that in the future episode. And that's pretty much it. And honestly, enough.
Yeah, I know, right?
2 podcasts is plenty.
Yeah, it might not sound like much, but when you really dig into it, it's a lot.
Well, yeah, and I'm doing all the editing myself, all of that. So it can be time consuming. And I'm
just
perfectionist.
a little bit.
I'm not easy on myself.
I hear you on that. Well, let's get into the 90s. And again, this is our opinion. This is what we think are the best movies from the 90s. If you disagree, if you agree, let us know in the comments. And
this is part 1.
Yeah, and it's part 1. So if you see something, if you don't see something that's not here, just know that it's probably going to be on part 2. Yeah. The first one we're going to start off with is good old Tremors and Kevin Bacon.
One of the best comedy horrors out there. In fact, I think some people don't even consider it a horror because it's so funny. The tone is so lighthearted.
Right.
But it is. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a creature feature, and it's a fun one.
It is, absolutely. And I mean, the effects alone are great for 1990s,
Fantastic.
But I'm trying to look for the kid's name because I can't remember it at the moment. Melvin provides a lot of the comedy. Dude, you know?
Yeah.
This is where I learned to love Kevin Bacon, first of all.
Same.
Let me just start with that. I think this is the first Kevin Bacon movie I saw, and I'm not disappointed about it.
No. It has one of the funniest opening scenes. It really stuck with this kind of subtle humor where these guys are just funny guys. They're goofy guys, right?
Yeah.
And the very opening scene when they're handymen, so they're fixing up a fence, and he's just like hitting this nail and he's missing it. And then on the last one he hits it and the guy just looks at him like, he caught it. And I don't think that was intentional. I think it was kind of improv.
Probably,
and they kept it in the movie. It's hilarious. It's one of my favorite moments in the movie.
And honestly,
but it sets the tone.
It does. It sets the tone. And Fred Ward, who it plays Earl, is very unrecognized because I feel like this movie he did great, and then he really faded out after this, except for some of the sequels. But him and Kevin Bacon had a chemistry that rarely get on screen, and it worked out. It just worked out so well.
It was a great buddy horror movie, and like you said, the practical effects were really great. It's another film that showcases that you don't have to see the creature all the time. And you really don't. You get POVs, really cool POVs of this creature going in and out of the ground. The graboids that they end up calling them, which I love that they end up naming them the way that they do.
It's so like obvious and on the nose. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's got this childlikeness to it, the way that they're discussing what to call it. Like they all just discovered earthworms in the backyard.
It kind of reminds me of like Deadites from Evil Dead. And there's a lot of shit from other horror movies that I think really add to this movie, like Jaws. It feels like
Yes.
Jaws at times, except in the earth, and
In
then
the desert, yeah.
yeah, and then the graboids and the deadites, and it feels like a lot of callbacks to a lot of movies now.
I think Jaws is a great correlation, 100%, because there is those moments, like you get the POV of the shark in Jaws, you get the POV of the graboid in Tremors, you get the like sucked under, real quickly
Right.
moment with the old guy in the field with the sheep, and then you get those, or the old couple, I guess, with the RV,
The
and then you
station
get,
wagon, yeah.
yeah, the station wagon. And you get the moments where like they're trying to figure out what's going on, and you got these two guys who are, together to figure it out, and they're teaming up with that one guy who just knows a lot about guns and stuff.
Yeah.
And in
Bert.
Jaws, it's the guy who knows a lot about sharks,
Yeah, exactly.
So there is quite a few very, very similar elements. And I think, of course, this one's much more lighthearted in tone. So
Oh, yeah.
you don't necessarily feel like it's on the nose. It's like it's the right amount of similarity to
Right.
almost make it like a parody of
It's
Jaws.
like, yeah, it's subtle, but really good at being subtle without and actually including enough without crossing the line.
Exactly.
And funny story I have to tell about Tremors, because I'm real on this podcast, and I just got to say, like, the scene where Kevin Bacon saves the girl from the tremor by peeling off her pants in the barbed wire and running in. Can I just say, this was 1990. I probably saw it when I was like 5, 6, 7. And I used to have dreams about saving girls by peeling barbed wire off their pants and running them inside. I'm not ashamed to admit it. Like, I was a boy, little boy.
Great in that movie, and that scene just definitely shows off her best quality, her legs that go all the way up.
It sure does. And for me, dreaming about being the hero to a woman like that in Tremors was a thing. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
It was a thing. Yeah.
And I love how he was kind of reluctantly into her. Like, at first he was like, she's not blonde, she's not super tall, like, she's not model-esque, right?
Yeah.
But then he ends up kind of falling.
Well, it kind of goes in levels. Yeah, right? Because he doesn't like her because she's not blonde, all that stuff. But then he turns into, oh, well, maybe I'm not good enough for it. And then it turns into the kiss at the end, and you got a happily ever
she's
ever.
Not like actively interested in him either. She's just existing with them.
I mean,
she's friendly.
We kind of talked about salute your shorts on the recording before this, and she wears a sunblock on her nose like the counselor.
Yeah. She's very like awkward and silly and very scientific, and she's a great character. I love her.
What better movie to enter the 90s with than Tremors, though, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Super fun. Great opener. The 90s, the 1990 was just a fantastic banger year for horror, especially horror comedy, because that's also when we got Arachnophobia.
Yes, which is a good segue, because Arachnophobia is next on our list. Sorry, I'm like making the effects for the cover here. I strictly 100% blame this movie for my undying, terrifying phobia of spiders, aka
I have
Arachnophobia.
a night terror, a waking nightmare from this movie. The scene where the spiders are falling from the ceiling and he kind of looks up for a moment and they're just like dropping down. That, I have dreams about that, and when I wake up for a split second, I will still see them, and it like freaks me out. It's like this recurring nightmare. It's from Arachnophobia.
It really is, and I debated on putting this movie on my list because I hate talking about it. I cringe. I get freaked out. I feel like spiders are crawling on me. The shower scene. I was not able to take a shower for a good 6 months after watching this movie. It was that bad.
My daughter loves this movie and Tremors. She calls Tremors the big worm movie, and she calls Arachnophobia the spider movie. Sometimes she's talking about eight-legged freaks, but she does like Arachnophobia.
I was gonna say eight-legged freaks is the other spider movie.
Yeah, she likes both of them. She's got a thing for creepy crawlies.
Nice.
But I love this movie because it feels kind of like one of the earlier dark comedies where it's not like blatantly funny all the time, but it has a lot of silly moments. I mean, Jeff Daniels and John Goodman alone are enough. You just put them in a movie and they have this silliness to them
Right.
sometimes. I would say Jeff Daniels feels very similar to someone like Jason Bateman in his humor or style. This kind of like
That's a good point.
almost
Yeah.
silly but like calling you out type of humor, where
Yeah.
he's just like clearly pointing out that this person's dumb or like doing something stupid. Like,
Well, one scene that always pops in my head, like you said, dark comedy that might not mean to be funny, but is when he's sucked up against the wall and the spider's on the table. And he's like, you
yeah,
got to put the cup over it. And he's like, I'm not doing that. You know, I can't
yeah.
remember exactly what happened. And he like sweating. He acted it out
He's
so well.
frozen.
Me,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have even been in the same room. I already would have been to Canada by then. But
Moving.
yeah, I would have been moving. But he put the cup over the spider, and that scene turned out to be very fucking funny. And I don't think they meant it to be that way, to be honest.
No, I think that was
it
to
was
show that he has arachnophobia.
yeah, exactly. It was meant to show his fear, but it came off friggin' hilarious. So, like you said, John Goodman and Jeff Daniels really kind of brought this movie together. Yeah.
I think John Goodman's introduction is the funniest part of the movie, where he's got
Yeah.
this like like he's coming in like he's saving the day. He's a
Badass
pest
exterminator.
controller.
Yeah.
Exterminator. And he's got like some like music.
He's almost got like Dewey's music behind him.
Yeah.
Like wow, 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 wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so
it
funny.
just adds to the character and
And he's firing it off like a pistol.
yeah, right. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Now, I'm having trouble. Was this the movie that ended with everything covered in cobwebs, or am I thinking of a different movie? I think because
I mean, there was a lot of webs, but not
Yeah.
as much, I don't think.
okay, I think I'm thinking of a different movie that
There is the barn scene where there's nothing but webs everywhere. A big giant web, and I think you get a little bit of that in the basement. But most of it, I think most of the scary parts happen in the barn and at the end when the house is just kind of infested.
yeah,
And
and
there's not a lot of webs.
okay, all right. So I think I'm thinking something different, but I think it speaks to how genius this movie is, right? How many spider movies have we had in horror that really did what Arachnophobia did? Besides
Not many, because
yeah,
I don't think they can now, because
no,
they
they
use
can't.
real spiders and you can't really release animals anymore into the
No,
wild.
you cannot.
Like you can't call back the spiders to get back in the cup. Like
no.
once they were out, they were out. They literally
Ugh.
introduced these spiders into their set. Like
I have yet
there
to
was no
rewatch
getting
this
them
movie.
back.
By the way, I will not You know what? I might try soon. I might try
It's
because
fantastic.
I've been fighting my arachnophobia lately, and maybe it's time to challenge it. But anyway,
Yeah.
Arachnophobia is, if you're talking about 90s horror, you have to, you know.
Yeah, and I also love that the expert gets got in this pretty quick.
Oh
Like,
yeah. Oh
he
yeah.
thinks he's so smart and like he's not smug, he's not a bad guy or anything, but
No.
he is an expert who's underestimating what he's encountering and he gets got. And I love that.
He really does real quick too.
Yeah.
But again,
Yeah.
the shower scene will always stick with me. I will never, even today, when I shower, I look up at the ceiling. I actually still have a spider on my ceiling in my shower right now because I killed one. And I said, let that be a lesson to any fucking spider that walks into this bathroom. You will get got.
I have a pet spider above my desk, so.
And
Well,
we're
he's not
logging
a
off.
pet.
All right. Goodbye, Justine. No, I'm just kidding.
He got into the house because it's been nice, and I've been leaving my slider open, which is right next to my desk in my home office. And a normal old garden spider got in. He's very, very small.
Okay.
And he's just built a web from my desktop, like, monitor up to my ceiling. He's got, like, a web there. And he just has this, he just sits there. He's got a nice little pretty web this thing right there above my desk, about a foot up. And I just don't have it in me to get rid of him.
Oh my God,
And
you're killing
honestly,
me.
we got mosquitoes, and he's probably keeping the mosquitoes at bay since he's
Yeah,
right by my
absolutely.
door.
They're good
His
for
name
something.
is Rufus, and he just
Oh,
he
okay.
he's here now. And he's
All right.
friend.
Well,
I
that's
had a spider in my car that
nightmare
dropped down
inducing.
onto my lap and scared the crap out of me, and I killed it. And my daughter got so mad and yelled, Rufus. And I was like, that's not Rufus, honey. That was a surprise spider, and surprise spiders deserve death. Sorry.
So yeah, exactly. Not to continue on with this, besides the fact that you have a pet fucking spider that doesn't live in a cage. Ew. Me and my girlfriend were driving up to a drive-thru to get food, right? And
Yes.
it was the middle of the summer, and I had my window open. I'm talking to this young girl who's giving me my food, and a spider drops in my window and crawls
Oh,
all
I
over my
hate it.
dashboard and then on my lap. And me, like the big tough guy, I'm trying to be like cool about it, but trying to wipe it off. And then it just got on me, and I freaked out. If you ever want to see a grown man cry like a girl, throw a spider on me, because that's what's going to happen. My girlfriend is cracking up in the passenger seat. They closed the drive-through window. Everyone in the restaurant is laughing their asses off. I'm pissed because I have a fucking spider that just disappeared. I didn't find it anywhere. And it was the most embarrassing moment in my life, I think. One of
There's
the most
two
embarrassing
types of
moments.
surprise spiders that I swear everybody has a story for. And it's the one
Yeah.
that drops in your lap in the car,
Mm-hmm.
and the one that you open your shower curtain and is in your shower.
Absolutely.
There's always one in your tub. Why are they hanging out in the bathtub?
Well, they're not
I don't
hanging
know.
out in my bathtub because I seen arachnophobia. So I know to look before I get in my bathtub.
Well, I mean, like, I'll just open the curtain and there's a spider on the wall.
Yeah,
It scares
right.
me every
Yeah.
time. Like,
Every
I
time.
hate surprise
But
spiders.
you're right.
But
There's two
Rufus
of them.
is cool, okay?
And they deserve to die. Rufus, I guess, can live, but that's on you.
He's doing
That's
a
on you.
service. It's
Yeah.
symbiotic, all right?
Okay. All right.
So
Well,
we
we've
started
talked
out
about
with...
we've talked
Go
about
ahead, sorry.
spiders enough. I need to get out of this. Let's talk about crazy women for a second, huh?
Oh, I'm a subject matter expert.
Misery. Yes, Miss Annie from Misery. Stephen
Yes.
King's classic book turned to film.
I feel like we get a lot of Stephen King adaptations on our list. This has happened a couple of times. which
It
is fine.
has,
I love Stephen
yes.
King. It just goes to show that he is a master at his craft, crafting a fantastic story fit for film. And here
absolutely.
we are again with another banger role, Kathy
Yeah.
Bates. And she just killed it. She killed it.
Honestly, when it comes to the movie, I'd say Kathy Bates has a much bigger role in how big this got than Stephen King. But I haven't
Yeah.
read the book. I've read most of Stephen King's books, but not Misery. And I heard this is
Yeah.
really good. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's very similar to Jack Torrance and Jack
Yeah.
Nicholson.
Right.
I think that you need a really fantastic actor to carry some of these characters. And Kathy Bates, just like Jack Nicholson, was perfect for the role. She was able to carry that character.
Yeah.
What's her face that did it for the show Castle Rock?
Liz.
Yeah, Lizzie Kaplan.
Lizzie Kaplan. Yeah.
Yeah, so Lizzie Kaplan did a great job as Kathy Bates as well to show a slightly different side to it, but you could tell she was channeling Kathy Bates's interpretation. Like,
Right.
you could tell that some of it was definitely pulled from what she saw Kathy Bates do previously, and why wouldn't you? The
Yeah.
decisions she made and the way that she presented or delivered some of those really silly lines, cockamamie, how do you deliver that? Seriously?
Right.
Kathy Bates did. Like,
She can nail it, and at the same
yeah.
time deliver the terror that's behind those weird lines, you know? Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we get one of the most disturbing scenes, I think, personally,
That's
with
right.
the two button.
Hobbling.
Was it? Yeah, the hobbling,
Yeah.
the 4x4, whatever you want to call it. But oof. Yeah, that
That's
hurt
one
me.
of those scenes that definitely you feel in your gut when it happens. Like, it's a visceral moment that
Yeah.
lives with you, haunts you. Like, it's a scary scene.
It is.
Definitely.
And something about snow and being abandoned in like a cabin in the middle of a snowstorm / mountains, it really adds to the effect.
It's a double isolation here too, because not only is he isolated by snow, he doesn't necessarily know where he's at. He's hobbled before the hobbling. I mean, he's
Yeah,
injured. Like
right.
he can't get anywhere. The only reason she had to hobble him is because he was gaining his strength back.
I know. Yeah.
And yeah, and he
Oh,
was
you're
finding a way
healing?
out.
It would be a terrible thing if you weren't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
Annie
super
Wilkes
fanness.
and that's a good point to bring up, because the super fan could really be adapted to today's world.
Yes, we've seen a few movies pull the super fan, obsessive fan aspect into it, like the fan,
Yeah, I know, right?
Swim fan. There's a
Swim
few of
fan,
them. They're
that's a good
really
one.
good. Like
They are.
it's a good antagonist because you can really go places with it. It's not something it's outlandish, the thought. I mean, they're crazy. So you can
Right.
deliver like a real crazy performance and make it
Well,
really intense and scary.
I mean, look at Taylor Swift fans right now. They're fucking nuts.
Swifties,
The
you be
Swifties.
careful. What if they find us?
They might no, they'll find
Be in
me
the
and they'll
comment
cancel
section.
they'll cancel me, and I'm not afraid of them. I am afraid of them, but like not until they come after me. But seriously, nuts. I mean, no.
Yeah.
To be real, there's a few fandoms, maybe. I'm just saying, like Swifties and Biebers and those type of things that
Yeah.
get real types of crazy. And yeah, I think it could really be redone these days and act. That's actually a movie I would like to see a remake of. Now that I'm thinking about it,
Yeah.
it's such a great movie, but I really do think it could be redone today. And like you said, Lizzie Kaplan did a good job in Castle Rock.
Did.
But to see a movie called Misery rebooted, requeled, whatever you want to call it, I wouldn't be against it. Yeah.
I mean, I'm never against another Stephen King adaptation. I think so far we're having a Stephen King renaissance. Why not?
Yeah.
There
I know,
is
right?
plenty of Stephen King work out there, though, that I would love to see adapted, and I think Flanagan would be a perfect choice for more Stephen King. But
Yep.
Misery was great.
Just don't
It was
spoil
great.
any more of Flanagan's work on my channel, please. No. No, I'm just kidding. No, you're right. Absolutely. Flanagan would be fucking 100% perfect to do some
Yeah.
King's work. Yeah, for sure.
So that's crazy in 1990. Now we can dip into some crazy characters in 1991 with Silence of the Lambs.
Yes.
Hannibal,
Hello,
Buffalo
Clarice.
Bill,
Yeah.
more crazies.
Oh boy. One of the most amazing psychological horror thrillers to ever grace us on screen, for sure.
Yeah, and this one's controversial. A lot of people do not consider Silence of the Lambs horror.
Yeah.
I disagree. It's horror. It's
I
about
disagree.
serial killers. I mean, what is more horrifying than that?
Yeah, and Anthony Hopkins chews off somebody's face, so we're gonna call it horror.
Your serial killer skins women.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's scary.
And before that, puts the lotion on its skin and less,
right.
you know,
pampers the skin for its preparation to be worn.
Isn't that right, Princess?
Yeah.
Jodie Foster is amazing as Clarice, and Anthony Hopkins literally, I'd say he's bigger than Michael and Jason.
I would agree. I think because this one borders the line of horror, it was so commercially, I guess, accepted. It was a wide release. They deemed it a thriller on purpose. It was supposed to be, it's a popular story.
Right.
It's meant to have been consumed by the masses, and it was. So just by that fact alone, I would believe Hannibal Lecter is one of the most popular villains out there.
Yes.
And I think it's also Anthony Hopkins' most iconic role. I don't know of another role that was more iconic than Hannibal Lecter. He's not even the main villain of the movie.
Right,
He's
which
not. Like,
a lot
he's
of
not in
people
it nearly as much as Ted Levine.
a lot of people
What?
seem to forget that he was kind of a side character, and because the
Yeah.
role was played so well, he turned into a superstar.
Right, absolutely. I it's funny because every time I see Ted Levine after that, I'm like,
Oh my
Buffalo
God,
Bill.
yeah.
But like, I don't feel like that's his most iconic role.
No.
I don't think him being Buffalo Bill is his most iconic role, but I do think that Hannibal is Anthony Hopkins' most iconic role. And I would even argue that Clarice Starling might be Jodie Foster's most iconic role. She has a lot of them out there, a lot of good films.
Yeah.
But I would say Clarice
For sure.
Starling might be her most iconic. Besides Nell. Nell, maybe.
That's a good point. I think you're right about Anthony Hopkins, and I think you're right about Frank Seals Jr., but Jodie... It may be Bad News Bears, but that's only me personally. So, no, you're right. I
Yeah.
think Clarice Starling is absolutely 100% her breakout role and can't be
Yeah, I
beat.
think so too.
Yeah.
This movie really kind of shone a light on FBI investigations and how they were getting into criminal profiling and
Yeah.
how that worked out and how it involved a lot of interviews with serial killers. And
Yeah.
and also, I mean, she's an icon. I mean, she dealt with a lot of sexism, a lot of classism,
Of course.
and her comeuppance, I guess, in the ranks, by scoring this case that nobody really wanted to touch. It's a really cool story.
Yeah, it is. And because I mean, we got Criminal Minds now, and we see a lot of shit about FBI profiling these days. This is kind of what really kicked it off and what went into profiling people and killers and what they look for.
Fairly new in the 90s.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff when you go back and rewatch this movie that's like, I catch something new every time in Silence of the Lambs, every time I watch it.
Yeah, same.
So it's one of those movies I can revisit all the time and not be disappointed.
Agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, again, the next movie on our list, I think I can say the same thing for. Candyman,
Yeah,
Candyman,
totally.
Candyman.
Candyman.
Candyman. Yeah.
There it is.
If you really couldn't tell, it was Candyman. This is I'd say, even though I have arachnophobia, Candyman might be the creepiest movie that we've talked about so far to me.
Yeah, the bees were a lot.
The bees were a lot. Yep.
The practical effects were great. Tony Todd is just an imposing force, right?
His voice.
Yeah.
And something about his voice and his presence.
Is so hot. She's gorgeous.
Yeah, she really is.
There's a romantic element to this movie, and it can't be ignored.
I think that can really separate Candyman from a lot of movies is that between the killer and the protagonist, there's a romanticism / attraction that's there that you don't want to be there, but it's there.
Yeah, and he's one of those scary antagonists that has a sad origin story, so you sympathize. So he's a sympathetic villain, right?
Yeah, right.
And then you add a element of romance to our protagonist and our final girl, and it's even more sympathetic. You're okay with it. Until you get real bloody and bees are out and stuff, and then you're like, oh my god, this is too much.
Okay, no. So to call up to the 2021 Candyman by Jordan Peele, or produced by Jordan Peele, I think. Mm-hmm. A lot of people complained that it was too woke, too political, too bullshit. But people seem to forget that Candyman was centered around projects and Black culture and the way people were suffering back then, and that type,
Yeah.
it was all tied into the original movie. So when people saw this new movie and started bitching about it, I was like, what are you talking about? That's what this movie franchise has been about from the beginning.
It's a recycled argument. It's
Yeah,
so tired because it
it really
happens
is.
all the time. Everyone always complains, it's so woke, it's too
Oh my God, I
political.
know.
And then
Yeah.
it's like, well, did you ever watch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Did you ever watch any of these original horror movies?
Yeah,
Horror movies have always been steeped in social commentary. And
they have.
Candyman is no different. It just so happens that the social commentary in Candyman is not reflective of your suffering.
Yeah, right.
It might
I
not be
mean,
something that you specifically relate to, but it doesn't mean it's not something you should hear.
no, I mean, yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre was an allegory for the Vietnam War, which a lot of white people fought, So, talking
A
about
lot of
Candyman,
people fought. Yeah,
yeah, a lot of
totally.
people fought, but yeah, so when you're talking about
Right.
something like Candyman, where it was originated from those type of issues, and I think it was kind of original back then for what it did. Yeah,
I think for 1992 and how good this movie is and how well accepted it
yeah.
is it's amazing because there was a lot of, I mean, hold on a second, I had to check a date on something because I can't remember when it was. Oh man, Rodney King, when did that happen?
Oh shit, maybe had to be like 89, 90.
1991.
Oh,
1991.
okay. All right, yeah.
Yeah, so this was literally filmed during the time that Rodney King was happening.
Right.
Like this movie is very important.
It is.
Its impact on the horror genre is important. So I'm so happy to see the likes of Jordan Peele revisiting that story. I wish people would accept it more like they accepted the original, because to me now is a good time to be talking about this again. I mean, the timing is perfect. So,
absolutely. Okay, so confession time again. I haven't seen the new Candyman.
I didn't see it right away either, but I did.
Yeah. So you have seen it.
Yeah, it was great. It was great.
I have it.
Cool,
like,
scary moments.
It's ready to watch, but some of the stuff I've heard has put me off. Like, oh well, I'll watch it tomorrow. I'll watch it tomorrow, and I haven't watched it tomorrow. So
I think it's great. I thought it was a great sequel for how old, like after the fact it is. It's really hard to pull off a good sequel, and I would say that was one of the better sequels that came out last year. In the last couple years, we've seen a couple of them, right? That one was the best one. It was very, what's the word I'm looking for? It wasn't cheap. Like, I feel like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequel and Halloween Kills felt very cookie cutter commercial, push it out, get it out there.
Now, when you say Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequel, you mean Netflix's original Texas Chainsaw? Yes, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
and I completely agree
Sally
with you.
Hardesty come back, and yeah, I feel like those ones were very cheap, commercialized sequels, where the Candyman sequel was just, there was a lot of care done in it. There was a lot of expensive choices, well crafted story, effects, visuals were really great. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I don't know why people gave it such a tough time. It was cool. It was not nearly as scary or as brutal as a lot of horror tends to be nowadays, but it still was brutal.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't understand where people were getting it. I think people are just
yeah, I think they wanted to hate it just to hate it. Like assholes,
stupid. Yeah.
I have to watch it. I have to just sit down and put it on and watch it because it's been there and I know I'm probably going to enjoy it. I don't know why I haven't watched it yet.
I liked it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of iconic killers
and romantic.
and romantic, we have something that Justine is going to take over here because another confession I have to make is I haven't seen this movie. So take it, Justine.
So I want to talk about Bram Stoker's Dracula, which by Francis Ford Coppola in 1992, and stars Gary Oldman, Winona Ryder, Keanu Reeves, Anthony Hopkins again.
Everybody.
Literally everybody. Oh yeah, Carrie Yules.
Yeah, I mean everyone.
Billy Campbell's in it too. Anyways, there's a lot. Monica Bellucci. I could go on. Anywho, so there's a lot of people in this. It's a romantic telling of Bram Stoker's classic Dracula tale, and it is a moving and beautiful film. So what's really cool about it is Francis Ford Coppola was trying to do nothing but practical filming effects. And I'm not talking like just special practical effects instead of CGI. There is one element of CGI in this, but it's also the only element of post-production effects. Okay. It's the only element of post-production effects. He did everything with tricks of the camera, tricks of filming, where he had shadow effects, background layered set pieces that created certain tricks of film. Everything was done during filming. It was not done after the fact.
Huh.
It's mind-blowing when you go watch this to knowing that. It's amazing. It's a work of art. Like, it's incredible.
I've heard a lot about it, and I've seen a lot of Dracula movies, but this is one, again, that it just keeps... So, I don't know if you know this feeling, right? But you have nothing to watch. You've watched a lot of the recent horror that you've heard about. And then you're sitting there like, all right, my backlog. And then you always pass over that movie you're supposed to watch, but you never do. Yeah. This is one of those ones that I can never think of to hit on.
Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, especially when one has been talked about so much, you tend to I've heard enough about it, I don't really watch it. Right. But this one is one that I think, if you're a fan of film, you have to watch just for that alone, just for the effects alone. But also because it's an interesting story for a vampire, where it's centered really around, again, a sympathetic villain. And there are good practical effects with his beastly designs. There's a moment where he looks like a werewolf. There's a moment where he is this giant human bat figure. And Gary Oldman's performance as Dracula is inspired. I mean, I don't know of a more diverse or emotional range for a vampire yet, besides Dracula, as Gary Oldman.
Or
Gary Oldman
Edward, maybe. Just saying.
He's even
I've made a lot of Twilight jokes tonight, so I'm just gonna let that slide. Yeah.
And then I think that the costume design is also really great, and the costume design was done by I'm gonna forget her name. Hold on a second. It's Aoka. One second. I have to get through all the sound. Eiko Ishioka. So the costume design was done by Eiko Ishioka, who did the same costumes for The Cell with Jennifer Lopez.
Oh, okay.
And if you look at the armor for Dracula in the beginning of the film, he has this very striated red armor, which looks almost exactly like the red suit.
Yeah, it's kind of like tendons / ligaments,
muscle striations or something.
Right. Yeah.
She used that in Dracula first for his armor. So it's really cool looking, but just the costume design across the entire film is amazing. It's very it's a period piece, of course, but it's also a little fantastical. Like, the choices she made were just a little over the top, a little beautiful, a little rich, a little out there, that it kind of takes you out of it when you're looking at the main characters a little bit, but just the right amount to make it feel whimsical.
Yeah. See, yeah. And period pieces are a tough spot for me. I really like them or I really hate them. And maybe that's another reason why I've held off on watching this so long, because I don't want to be disappointed, but I don't think I'm going to be. And I have to just man up and watch it.
Bram Stoker's Dracula is typically at the very top of people's favorite vampire movies. It's my favorite vampire movie. And I'm not alone. I know that. A lot of people will say that this is their favorite. But not just because it's a good vampire movie. Again, if you like film, you need to watch this because, again, none of the effects except for one element of, like, there's, like, one, like, electrical orby element that happens in one scene in the movie that is post-production effects.
And
so everything else is in production.
Yeah. I mean, this was, what, 92 or something like that?
Yeah, 1992.
Yeah, 92. So that's not bad for one scene to be CGI in a decade that was experimenting with CGI like a crazy person. So,
yeah.
All right.
Well, and that kicks us off into 1993, another fantastic practical effects film that stood the test of time, that did use some CGI.
Yeah.
Jurassic Park. Another one that people don't consider horror that I would beg to differ.
No.
Horror. Another creature feature.
I nowadays wouldn't consider it horror.
That's okay.
As an adult. Does that make sense? As a kid, it freaked me out. It freaked me out.
I would say if you're judging what is horror based on whether it scares you or not, you're going to find that you don't have a lot of horror movies.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Yeah.
But for me, it's whether the plot surrounds or centers on people being killed, maimed, or scared.
Yeah.
If that is the plot, which in this case, it's the plot, they're being eaten by dinosaurs.
Let me just say, right, that any other movie like this, I wouldn't call horror, and I wouldn't consider putting on this list. But because it's Jurassic Park, because of the movie it is, I absolutely agree with you, because it deserves to be on a list of 90s horror movies. Yeah.
It deserves to be on every list. It's probably my second or third favorite movie of all time.
It's just crazy how amazing the effect. So the story itself was groundbreaking and great in and of itself, but the effects were just amazing. You can't tell where the CGI starts and where the practical effects end.
It's so good. Very rare moments in the film do you notice it very clearly, like with the Brachiosauruses at the beginning. You kind of can tell. There's moments with the Velociraptors, maybe. But mostly it is just clearly really well done practical effects.
Let's put it this way, right? You just mentioned Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. Yeah. In a decade where CGI should be perfected, you can tell in that bus scene where half that blood is CGI or half the intestines are CGI hanging out of the bus. That T-Rex scene where, if I'm not mistaken, 25% of it was like CGI, maybe 30, 40%, something like that. You can't tell in a movie that was made in 1993.
You can't.
That's how masterful it was.
It was one of the first movies I remember seeing in theater, too. My mom took me to it.
Me too.
One of my favorite theater experiences because she screamed so loud when that raptor almost got her foot when they're in the ceiling. And I was always obsessed with dinosaurs, and this brought them to life.
Yeah.
And my daughter's obsessed with the Jurassic Park series, too, so she watches all of them with me. We watch Camp Cretaceous all the time, which is on Netflix.
Oh,
and it's a
God,
really fantastic kids show.
I've seen it. I've never watched it before, though.
It's so cute. I'm glad that the franchise is still going on. I'm glad that it's concluding its second part of the trilogy.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where it goes and how it finishes off, bringing back the OG cast.
It is going to be exciting.
Neill. I love Laura Dern, and I love Jeff Goldblum, and they just were iconic in this movie.
They were.
And I love every single Jurassic Park movie. I know a lot of people don't like the third one or the new ones. I love them all. I just
I
love
too.
dinosaurs.
I do too. Honestly, with Jurassic World and everything else, I'm gonna watch them. No matter what, I'm gonna watch them. I have no problem saying that. And honestly, I like them. Even the worst, even the worst ones, I'm gonna watch and enjoy, especially on a 70-inch like 4K TV with the new ones. You're gonna entertain me, you know.
Exactly. 100%.
Dinosaurs are always gonna be a great thing. I can't argue with you there. And Jurassic Park really was. It was just like something new of its kind. I don't know how to explain it, but
it was. I mean,
it was crazy.
That was an epic. It was an epic that they created with dinosaurs. Again, they brought them back to life. Like, not like for us. Like, they feel real when you're watching it. It's magical, right?
They do.
And scary sometimes. You know? The raptors are the best part, right?
The fucking the raptors, the spitters. I call them the spitters. Yep, those ones were it for me. I was like, nope, I'm good.
Yeah, I love that moment. The sound is so good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
so good.
Jurassic Park. I mean, we could talk. We could have a whole episode alone on the Jurassic Park series because of how good it is. So,
and I probably will closer to when the new one comes out in June.
Yeah, see, that'd be
an episode with the Let Us In podcast for sure.
Hell yeah,
cover it. Yeah,
there's so much to cover too. Yeah, that's good. See, that's the best part about Jurassic Park is that it started when we were kids, and now we have a new extension of it for your kids. You know.
Yeah, and I think the new one's going to be like the most epic, like the most in your face action and dinosaurs out, all over the place. Like it's just bombarding us with dinosaur moments. And
nostalgia. I mean, they're bringing back the old cast. They're bringing back the old cast. It's going to be an epic with nostalgia. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, I'm excited. Gobble it up.
Talk about nostalgia, right? Let's move on to a movie from 1994. And you know me, Nightmare on Elm Street is my favorite franchise ever. So when New Nightmare came out, my interest was piqued because I was still young. 94, I was 7. And my uncles were able to snag a copy and let me watch it when I wasn't supposed to, even though I'd already seen Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and 1 way before this. This, I feel like New Nightmare laid the groundwork for Scream, which is something we're going to be talking about later on. But
in part 2.
In part 2. And that's because of the meta aspect of this movie. We reinvented Freddy Krueger, a villain who has been built through six movies up until this point, right?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Freddy's dead. So 6 movies we've been building up this villain. And Wes Craven comes along like, you know what? I don't like what's happening to this character. He needs a new rebirth. Here it is. And and it bombed at the box office. It bombed. But now people realize how good of a movie this really was.
Yeah. Yes. It was great. I mean, again, you brought back Heather Langenkamp.
Yeah. I know. I can never pronounce her name.
Yes. Heather Langenkamp is back. You're introducing... Oh, Miko Hughes is in this. Which, if you're a fan of Pet Sematary...
Right.
That's Miko Hughes as well. the little boy, the little evil child.
Little evil child.
Achilles cutter.
I know. He's so creepy, man. I don't know what it is about that kid. But he just... he owns the original playground that was in New Nightmare. He actually bought it.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he bought it. He has it in his backyard. I'm like, why would you do that?
I have like a signed poster from him, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
This was Wes Craven's first endeavor in the Metaverse, I think.
Yeah, and I get exactly what you mean by it led up to Scream because of that. Because
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. This is where he's really like dipped his toe in meta horror, and I think it was great. It's fun. It's
Yeah.
probably like the most charismatic Krueger.
It is, but at the same time, it also returned him to creepy Krueger. I like to refer
Cruel,
to him.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
A lot of people had a problem with his glove and his new look. I think the trench coat and the bald head and that fucking glove was terrifying.
Yeah, I just watched a little excerpt of Robert England talking about that, about how the new glove comes out of its fingers. It was different.
Yeah.
It was cool,
It was
and
like bones and ligaments and
he would like pick up like food with it from the food
yeah.
service and toss it in his mouth.
I love
And all
Nightmare
I
on
could
Elm
think of
Street
was the
documentaries.
pizza with the meatballs.
Right, yeah.
When he
Yep.
was talking about
The
it.
the meatballs. Oh my god. And then we also got the scene where Camp is sitting at the talk show and Freddy's out in the audience doing one of these. That's one of my
Yeah.
favorite scenes ever from the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. It just like it was such a hearken to how Freddy was such an icon and how everyone loved him. But this was a child molesting, child killing dude, and people loved him. And it was just, I don't know.
Was
I
that
loved it.
canon yet? I mean, was that blatantly discussed at that time that he was a child molester?
Well, okay. So I actually had this conversation with Mike, the movie Misfit, the other day, right? So
Yeah.
Freddy's Dead did confirm it without actually saying it, I guess you
Okay.
could say. That's debatable. So that's my opinion. That I
I feel
can't
like
say
it
that
is really
100%
ambiguous.
fact.
It's
Yeah.
something that is discussed because we know that it was originally written into the very first Nightmare on Elm Street, that it was
Yeah.
supposed to be discussed very blatantly, and they cut that out. And so I wonder how much of it is inferred by us knowing that and how much of it's actually true, and why
Yeah.
we're able to be okay with him as a charismatic icon killer, because it really wasn't blatantly talked about until fans started talking about it and really
Right.
digging into the character, right? So you wouldn't know that until you were a fan of him
Exactly.
and digging into it.
Yeah. And I feel like Freddy's Dead really had like the articles on the walls and things like that and really pointed to it, but 2010's remake is technically when they confirmed that he was
Exactly.
a child molester. So, but even still, the point still stands that scene where everyone's admiring Freddy Krueger and they love him. I was just mesmerized by it. And
Yeah.
and then again, the meta aspect where all the original characters are playing. The only downfall, right? One of the only things that makes this movie not perfect is that Robert Englund didn't have a showdown with Freddy Krueger.
Oh, yeah.
Complete missed
cool.
opportunity. Yeah.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love a good meta film, and so this is probably up there as one of my favorites of the franchise. Dream Warriors is going to hold that crown forever. I think I would go Dream Warriors, and then the original, and then probably this one, actually.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, I would say it's probably third.
You know me, Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and 1 kind of alternate between the two.
Yeah.
And then Dream Warriors, and then maybe New Nightmare. But yeah. So yeah, it was just great to get a different Nightmare on Elm Street in the 90s, and I feel like again it was I think I could be completely wrong about this, but in the documentary I could have sworn he said something about New Nightmare introducing the idea of meta in his head and coming up with Scream. So
that's cool.
It would be cool. I got to go back and check that documentary and see if that's a real thing or if I'm just making it up in my head.
Make sure you update us.
I will. Now, we're going to end this part one with one of my top 5 movies of all time, The Crow.
Yeah.
No edit there. I'm gonna play that into the
They'll
video.
never know what we were laughing
They'll
so hard
never know. No. The Crow, top 5, one of my top 5 movies of all time. What about you?
Yes. I mean, now this one actually, of all of the films we're going to talk about or have talked about, I would say The Crow is the closest to not being a horror movie at all. Like this
And
one really is like a gothic thriller, like
it is,
a gothic crime drama, if anything. There
yeah.
is some brutality to it, and it is
Uh,
dark
it's kind of like Batman.
noir.
It's a crime noir
Yeah.
thriller. And you know what? It doesn't matter because you could ask me what the best like thriller comedy is. I'm going to say The Crow. You could ask me what the best horror movie is. I'm going to say The Crow. I'll introduce it to any list I possibly can
Any
introduce it
list.
on because it's The Crow with
And
Brandon
Brandon
Lee.
Lee deserves that. Yeah. It
I
is
just
so
rewatched this
good.
movie the
Yeah.
other week and it holds up so well today.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the darkness to it. He's a goth icon, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
I think everybody who's gone through something, any type of trauma, really relates to his as the hero. Like the hero, the dark anti-hero style. Um, it's good. And I think Draven is he's an icon for sure.
Yeah. His I think you can't find a better balance between like vigilante, anti-hero, and hero than you do find in Eric Draven because he's so
Yeah.
charismatic, he's so likable, and it's all for the love of what happened to his his love.
Exactly.
And it's so bad that no matter what he does to these people, you're just like, yeah, fuck them. Throw them off a bridge
Fuck
in a
him up.
burning car. I don't
Do it.
care.
Woo!
And
Like
I'm
you're
just
cheering him on the whole time.
one of my favorite scene. I don't want to get to that point yet because that's towards the end of the movie. But yeah, it's really hard to explain. What's the city called? I forget what it's called now. Anyway, the city is on fire. We got, fire it up. And
Yeah.
it's just, this is one of my favorite movies to watch at Halloween because it's so Halloween-esque. It takes
Yeah.
place on October 30th, Devil's Night, I think they call it. And, yeah, like you said, he's a goth icon, and Brandon Lee is just such a handsome friggin' man in that makeup. Like you look at,
Yeah. The
I'm a
bone
straight man, and I
structure.
can
He's
say
got such a
like,
great
oh, good
jawline.
God, look at this guy, right? I dressed up
Yeah.
as him as Halloween last year for my podcast, and I looked like something from Deathgasm. It was pathetic. Yeah.
Yeah, he pulls that off so well, and his silhouette is iconic. It's a very much noir, grungy thriller, and there isn't a lot of movies that can accomplish that really well. I remember Spawn being very like similar in tone and look, but
Yep.
this one just did it so much better, and
Yeah.
it's cool. Like I don't know if I can say much more about it. It's just a cool movie. He's cool. The story's cool. Like
It's
the
really
design,
hard.
the music, it's all cool.
Yeah, the soundtrack is top notch.
One of
Like
my
Chef's
favorites.
Kiss.
Yeah.
Soundtrack is one thing you can point out. There's no doubt about it that deserves to be number one. The cast is amazing. You have Ernie Hudson, you have Brandon Lee, you have Tony Todd.
Tony Todd is always making sneaky appearances in horror.
He really is. It's funny that we were talking about him in Candyman. Now he pops up in this, but the cast alone
he pops
is just
up in Final Destination too.
Yeah, Final Destination is one I
Yeah.
knew for a fact. I was like, that is fucking Candyman right there. I know that.
Yeah.
And he's in a lot of other shit like Hatchet. He's in Hatchet.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, he's like the cameo king of horror.
He really is, yeah.
Him and Robert Englund.
Yeah. The Crow is something I feel like we can't talk about a 90s horror list without throwing The Crow on there.
I feel like The Crow is like the definition of the 90s. It
is.
epitomizes it. This
Yeah,
is when the
we have.
grunge goth horror kind of really kicked off is in 94, like the mid 90s, right? This is when it started to turn from everybody wearing pastels to everybody wanting to be cool goth.
Yeah.
I love it.
And and this might be a crime to say, Brandon Lee was amazing in The Crow. I just don't know if he would have been great outside of The Crow. Like, I don't know if anyone else gets that, and it's hard to say because we'll never get that, unfortunately, due to the
I think he could have been like Bill Skarsgård, who's been recently cast for the remake or the reboot. And I think that they're very similar in style and like the way that they carry themselves on film, I would say is the most closely similar, I guess. So I could see him being like the Bill Skarsgård of that time.
That's a good point. Like that. Yeah. Behind makeup and behind characters, I think they're really good. And yeah, I think if he had a chance to grow, we could have seen a lot of good outlandish characters coming from, you know. But one of my favorite scenes, and what I wanted to bring from this is when he gets shot at the end after the crow is shot and he doesn't have his powers anymore and he just goes, oh, fuck, and he falls over. When I rewatched it the other day, I couldn't stop laughing. I love that part. It just made me love Brandon Lee even more. I was like, that's amazing. So anyway,
I think one of the coolest parts for me was when he was talking to the kid and he said, it can't rain all the time.
Can't rain all the time.
He's still inspirational in spite of what he is and what his purpose is now, that he still finds time to like inspire a kid.
I know, right?
Hope, you know. And
I love that. Yeah, can't rain all the time.
Yeah, in his cool goth tone.
Oh my god! One of these days, I'm gonna do a Halloween where I dress just like him and I actually hit it.
You gotta hit it.
Yeah,
maybe I'll do it too.
Yeah, right. The Crow. We've been talking for a while, Justine. We've been recording for a while. I feel like we are at the end of part 1 at this point. We're both tired. We're ready to go. I don't know about you guys, but
we really love the 90s and we got to do it justice. So we got to make sure that we're like perky and ready to deliver.
We got some serious films coming up next, so we got to throw it into part 2.
Bangers. So part 2 is going to be pretty epic. Honestly, from here on out, this is where we're getting to some of my favorite stuff. And I cannot wait for us to wrap this up so we could talk about what our favorite decades were.
I know.
I feel like, I don't know, it might be the 90s. It might be the 2000s.
Maybe.
The 70s.
I don't know. I'm aiming for the 80s.
What's your favorite from the ones we've talked about today?
The favorites from today? You mean like this list right here?
The list we just ran through. What is your favorite out of that?
All right, I'm going to name 3, right? Tremors.
No, one. Pick one. Come on. You can do it. Pick one. Just
one. It's got to be The Crow. I mean, I can't look at this list, look at The Crow and say that's not my favorite. Yeah.
Jurassic Park.
Ooh,
Jurassic Park is my favorite.
I can see that, though. You have like a kid connection to it. You have a kid who's connected to it, so that makes sense. Yeah.
And I love dinosaurs.
And dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs are cool.
All right. Fandomatrandom.com. Click, like, subscribe. Watch all the videos on there. Just Enough on TikTok and Discord and a bunch of other stuff I'm going to leave on the bottom of this description.
Just Enough at Dirty Horror.
And Dirty Horror. And Let Us In Podcast, who I just guested on right before this video. Make sure you go and check them out, too. I'm going to link them as well. And if you don't agree with this list that we put forth today, let us know in the comments what you would have made. Yeah. Otherwise, I think that wraps it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justine. And thank you, anyone who's watching. Have a great night.